On the Kick Radio app and online at kickradio.co.uk. This is Kick Radio.
Hello and welcome back to the Southbank Podcast. I'm today's host, Jacob Jones. I'm joined by Sami Ahmed and Cameron Gorman. Go to you, Cameron, first. How are you? Most of the weekend, but more importantly, how are you off completing the Didsbury Dozen?
I didn't think that'd be mentioned here, but yeah, I turned 21 this week. Thanks, Jacob. I think what left me feeling most hungover was the result. A must-win game, and we drew. And honestly, we were probably not quite lucky to get the draw. But I don't know. Watching these highlights back, I think we really let ourselves down in the first half. I think we were utterly dominated, to be honest. Watching it in real time, I was thinking, God, we are both awful. We look like two championship sides kicking a ball around. But it really doesn't get any prettier when you watch it back. I'm not sure how we ended up 2-1 in front, because we didn't really deserve to be. But
we'll get onto the football very shortly. But Sammy, how have you been, mate?
I've been all right, mate. Yeah, been all right. A lot of travelling. So, yeah, I am very tired. So, you're going to have to bear that with me. And, yeah, besides from that, all's good, all's well. How have you been, mate?
Yeah, aside from the Wolves, completed the dozen with Cameron, which was a very best achievement of the week, actually, looking at the Wolves result as well. So, heading back after this podcast and all. So, that's going to be exciting. Got to go to Stockport tonight as well. So,
woohoo! I'm sorry for your loss.
So anyway, we'll get on to the game. Sammy, point gained or 2 points dropped? What's your thoughts?
See, like I said last week, I said I could either see us losing or drawing, and we drew. So, in all fairness, seeing how we was playing, we, like Cam said, it literally looked like two championship sides, like kicking a ball around. I don't think we deserved to have won if that was the outcome due to how we was playing. But, I'm happy to take a draw away against Palace. Given recent fixtures against Palace as well, we've always lost against them. So I'll happily take a draw. I'd say, personally, for me, point gained.
Cam, do you agree?
I'd say you're being quite optimistic there, Sammy. Realistically, us being at home, I think you've got to see it as 2 points dropped. It's a must-win game, given our position in the table. I think what made things worse is earlier in the day, before the results, Southampton winning. I think that put a lot more pressure on our boys to succeed. Ultimately, it didn't happen, but I think that first half we got very lucky in the terms that we could have easily been going into half-time about 2-0 down, or maybe more, because we just really didn't look like we'd woken up. And they didn't in some regards, but they were still outplaying us in that first half. Second half, we managed to get our noses in front, but Wolves going in the lead in a game, it feels like an elephant in a tree. It's going to fall eventually, and I just don't see us winning a game. I think it puts a lot more pressure on a result against Southampton next week.
Yeah. I'm definitely on the board of, I thought it was a terrible point in Anthem Guard. It's funny how football works. Last week we got the same result and we come here almost celebrating, jubilant. And this week I'm walking away from the stadium thinking, that might be us done. I think I do agree with what Sammy said, where on the base of the game, we did not deserve to win that football match. I thought first half was one of the worst quality football matches I've ever watched in the Premier League. I think I said to you at some point, whoever's decided to put this on Sky probably doesn't have a job this morning, because I don't think the viewing numbers would have been very good come the second half. So God only knows how it ended 2-2. There was a phase of play in even the second half where Semedo gives the ball away on the edge of the box, and then they give it immediately back to us, in which we then clear it back to them. And it ends up in almost a brawl on the halfway line just for the ball, and a free kick ended up being given. And it was just awful, the quality of football. You can see why both teams were down where they are, no disrespect to Palace. But we can't keep conceding off these set pieces is the main takeaway. It's two set pieces. I think the first one is quite unlucky. Larson trying to get it away, but there has to be that communication there between him and Jose Sarr. And the second one, again, just no one marking the back post. How many times are we going to have to say it each week? But I'd like to go back to what Cam said, where we were lucky not to be a couple goals down at half time, which when you do watch the highlights back, it didn't feel like it in the stadium. Palace did have the fair share of chances. But I do also think we were very frustrated not to go into half time 1-0 up. And it was a bit of a scenario about the whole game, missed chances, particularly one that infuriated me, and I'm sure we'll get onto it. Pablo Sarabia in the first half, a chip ball over to him. All he has to do, Henderson's rushing out, just get any of it. It would go past the keeper, a dink, just put it in the corner, anything. He tries to play it for the penalty, which you're never going to get because Henderson's seen that you're looking for the penalty about 5 seconds before he's even made contact. What did you think about missed chances, Cameron? Do you think we should have been better in front of goal on Saturday?
I completely agree. I think we had to have been better in front of goal given the position we're in. I think when you're bottom of the table, you need to win games. That means automatically you need to take your chances. Like you said about miscommunication, I think Strand Larsen has the right idea in terms of trying to clear the ball, but that's up to Jose Sarr to call to him to claim it. And then Mark Gay, he gets an easy goal. He must have been well happy to boost his tally because as a centre half, you don't get many. But when you're a centre half in a set piece against Wolves, you must be very hopeful. Will Hughes, he always decides to have a great game against us for some reason, even though he's quite
average,
varied player, I'll say. But great set piece delivery from him from a free kick we maybe shouldn't have given away, quite poor. Going on to that Pablo Sarabia chance, excellent ball by Cunha, swung in. Reminiscent of his goal against Tottenham, I thought. There was a few of those kind of cut-in crosses Cunha did during the game where a few players had chances to get on the end of it. Didn't quite work out. That one did. Now, Sarabia, I don't think you can look to go to ground there. Like you said, he has to get some sort of contact on the ball, which he did. But instead of trying to go around Henderson, a big bloke, he's an experienced Premier League shot stopper. He's not going to be giving away a penalty in that situation. He's experienced and he's played for a variety of clubs at different levels. He's not going to fall for something as silly as that. And I thought the decision was almost pragmatic. I think if he wants to, dink it, place it, whatever you want, but you have to score that chance. Now, Jose Sarr, great performance from him, especially in that first half. Despite the goal we do concede, I think he stops most of them from happening. He made a lot of big saves, but ultimately, we just concede so many chances and we don't seem to turn things around.
Yeah. Sami, do you echo them thoughts?
Yeah. You know what? I'm kind of the same. I think I have to agree with Cameron there. Obviously, when Cunha lays it off to Sarabia, I was there thinking, oh my God, a goal. Come on, let's have it. We got a goal. And then as soon as he hits it straight at Henderson, I'm there. I'm infuriated. I'm there like, no. I'm saying numerous things to the telly. I'm saying numerous things to like screaming and shouting at Sarabia. Could just laid it off, or even like you said, just dinked it in. But it's this same thing with Sarabia. Like, I don't know how it is from you guys' end, but from my perspective, it just from obviously last season watching him and obviously that incredible goal against Tottenham, like, it put us with a bit of belief and like seeing, oh my God, like, this is Sarabia we've been missing. The Sarabia from PSG that we signed, like, this is who we need. And then now recently, like, even just seeing him play, like, okay, I understand, like, in all fairness, yeah, he is trying, but it's not the Sarabia that we have. We missed the old Sarabia from last season. Obviously, he, like you said, he should just dinked it in or he even laid it off and just tapped it in. But for me, it was a poor chance missed.
Yeah, for me, he's almost a bipolar football, if that makes sense. Some weeks he turns up and it's like, this guy's really good on the ball, and then things like Saturday, you just look at him and think, how are you a professional footballer? Remember, just before he was subbed off, on the halfway line, he's got more time than anything in the world. I think Aitken was screaming through at the left-hand side. He dribbles, stops on the halfway line, and can't play a 2-yard pass. He gives it away. Straight, just like Molyneux erupts into noise because of how poor it was. I mean, it wasn't just him. I think Tommy Doyle had a really good second half, but I think even him, we know how good his passing is. In the first half, a few misplaced passes from him. Semedo, I thought, did his job defensively really well. Captain may I add on Saturday's game, which was quite interesting to see. But I think even his passing was quite, left a bit to be desired. I think we saw one great pass all game, and that was Santi Bueno for the equaliser, because what an unreal ball that is to set Unya, who plays it into Larson for a quality goal. I think both of our goals were quality. The only two bits of quality we really shown in the whole game. But that's probably where the positives end, because I'm going to have to address a bit of an elephant in the room. Once we went 1-0 down, in the 62nd minute, there was a triple substitution happened, and the atmosphere in the stadium, it went toxic very fast. I'll read out the three subs for you. It was Goncalo Guedes for Pablo Sarabia, Mario Lemina for Tommy Doyle, and Jorn de Bellegarde for Totti Gomez. There was a chance of you don't know what you're doing coming from the Southbank, directed towards Gary O'Neill. Cameron, what on earth was going on in this moment? I think most of the frustration were at Tommy Doyle's substitution, weren't they?
Yeah, I have to completely agree. The chance of you don't know what you're doing only really started when that second one went onto the pitch. Tommy Doyle, excellent last week against Brighton. And I have to say, Pablo Sarabia against Brighton, he made a good cameo too. I think that ultimately was the reason Gary O'Neill trusted him to start the game. But we all saw after that first half and how he carried on stinking up the gaff in the second, that wasn't the right choice. And Gonzalo Guedes for Sarabia, I think that was a great sub. Gonzalo Guedes made brilliant impact on the game. I think he is very dynamic in the transition, and I think he is able to drag defenders out of position. He draws players to him, and I think he really opens up the space. I think he's someone who deserves to be starting games over someone like Sarabia, because he's ultimately also one of our top goal scorers this season. I think the Tommy Doyle change for Lemina, I agree with the Southbank on one regard. Tommy Doyle, his passing, you can't afford to take that off. It's like a hot knife through butter, is the way I put it. And we really lack that in any other regard. I think after the Tommy Doyle change, like you said about Semedo's passing forward, there were some chances where he could have played it down the line into, say, Guedes or Cunha or whoever was there at that moment, and he wouldn't be playing it through. He'd be going back around the defender, trying to play it into midfield. I think Lemina did do well when he came on. I think his physicality was needed, like Gary O'Neill said in his post-press conference. Although I don't think Tommy Doyle is necessarily the right change, but I do see why that was the case. As João Gomez, who in recent weeks might have been the one you take off, was having a phenomenal game, and I think he was my personal one of the match. But Bellegarde, he is a player unlucky. Like you said in one of the recent episodes of the podcast, Jacob, you said he has probably been dropped because he's easy to drop, in the regards that he is a player who is brilliant this season, much changed compared to the last, but in our system and the way we play, he plays a variety of positions. Sometimes he was at left back because like Nuri was pushing so high up. Sometimes he was in midfield. Sometimes he was up front. And I'm not sure what instructions Gary O'Neill gave to him.
Sami,
obviously, hearing the chats, you don't know what you're doing. Obviously, I wasn't there at the stadium, so I was just watching it on the telly. Obviously, hearing the chants, it just gave me like a bit of flashbacks to the Brentford game. And obviously everyone started chanting that you don't know what you're doing. Obviously, I think, like Cam said, taking Tommy Doyle off, like we said last week, like we don't have someone that can pass the ball, whip the ball since Neves and obviously Moutinho, and when they used to play for us. So it's not nice to see someone that can actually whip that ball and do them long passes in, and then just to take him off to obviously add a bit of strength into the midfield. Obviously, me personally, I don't know. I don't think it was a right call for getting Tommy Doyle off and then Mario Lemina on. And like you said as well, with Gonzalo Guedes, obviously my thoughts about him last week when he looked a bit disappointed after the goal. I mean, like you said, that's just how he is. But now putting him on, like, it shows he should be starting more. He should be starting more than Sarabia, like Cam said, because obviously you see how Goncalo is with the ball. Okay, in some situation he is quite unfortunate, but you can see the different types of level of player that each of them are. You see how Sarabia is compared to Goncalo Guedes. So for me, it actually shows that he should be starting more. But and obviously with Bellegarde as well, you know, I'm not really too bothered about Bellegarde. Like you said, like he's one of them players where, like you said, Jacob, he's kind of easy to drop. So you know, were they the right substitutions? Maybe, maybe not. Obviously, for Goncalo Guedes coming on, that's probably the only sub I'd agree with. But besides from that, you know, I kind of have to agree with the chats that were going on with the Wolves fans. Obviously, you know, with Gary O'Neill, and I get obviously you have to make subs, but you know, it's in terms of making the correct substitutions, and obviously, in stating someone that had a brilliant game against Brighton last week that led us to our equaliser, to be taking him off the pitch when, you know, okay, he made some good quality passes. Okay, there was a couple of little passes where, you know, it kind of wasn't the best, but you know, you can't always expect 100% of the players from the first half. You know, you got to obviously give them time to obviously ease into it and understand the players that they're playing against more. So yeah, for me, obviously, I'd agree with like I said, I'd agree with the Goncalo substitution, but the other two, that's something I can't agree with.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I thought Guedes was fantastic when he came on. Played on that right hand side, which was a bit further out wide than Sarabia was playing. It seemed to be more of a bit of a cam Sarabia was on, which I remember I said to Cam at the start of the game that if you are going to play with that Cam, then ideally I'd like it to be someone like a Bellegarde rather than a Sarabia, because I think Sarabia almost gets lost in that kind of position in there. He isn't physical enough to kind of play that role. But when you have people like a Goncalo Guedes on the bench, you know, not even just Guedes, you got players like Carlos Forbes who did not come on, who were just far more direct. It gives us so much more. I know, look at that second goal. It comes from Guedes stretching out the fullback and being able to play it back in. But I'd like to read out a quote from Daz Hale, who has supported the podcast very nicely when we first started. He said that Gary O'Neill came out and said, all of that dressing room has basically not played many games in the Premier League, and we are trying to help them learn on the toughest stage. What on earth is he on about, Sammy? Can you try and put this into description for me? Because I'm struggling to find what he is trying to say.
No words, mate. No words. No words. I mean, like you said, like I don't know what he means by that. We've had players that have been playing for 3 years, so in the dressing room, unless he's referring to obviously like the Rodrigo Gomez and Pedro Lima, but you don't refer to a whole dressing room if it's only stayed at like 2, maybe 3 people at a push. Come on, man. Like even when I heard that, and I was just like, what? It just it doesn't make sense to me. It generally doesn't. So yeah, I generally don't know how to feel about that one.
Cam, you got any words?
I mean, Sammy really almost said all there is to say. I think you can't be hiding behind that, and it feels like a bit of an excuse to me. I think Gary O'Neill, he only has about 3 or 4 members, like Sammy said, in that dressing room who have this lack of experience, namely Rodrigo Gomez, who hasn't been getting minutes at all anyway. Why? Carlos Forbes, who has still been making an impact regardless. Pedro Lima, who is quite young, so I think he is kind of exempt from this. But then the majority of the players in that team, they are still playing Premier League minutes. They are either way still playing top level football. Gonzalo Guedes, last year on loan at Villarreal, that is still a top team. Same for Yusuf Mosquera, who was also joining him at that club last year. Even though he is injured, again, experience in a top league. I don't think you can hide behind saying that the quality of football they played isn't quite enough, where it namely is you see players stepping into a lot of other teams from these leagues, some worse leagues, and making an instant impact. I think it's quite a poor excuse to cower behind.
I agree.
I mean, I'll quiz you now. How many Wolves players on Saturday are in their first season in the Premier League? How many of them played? Take your answers now.
0.
1. Jurgen Strand
Oh,
Larsen.
Yeah, Larson.
Wow.
I suppose you could maybe argue Santiago Bueno didn't have many
course.
league minutes last year, but he's still not new to the league. In fact, Palace had 2, Daichi Kamada and LaCroix. So to me, it screams of a man who is feeling the pressure and is just trying to point fingers anywhere but himself, really, which it's starting to feel a bit uncharacteristic of O'Neill. So on Saturday, he's usually always at the Southbank clapping at the end of the game. He walks straight down the tunnel, which, obviously probably has something to do with, 15,000 fans telling you you're not very good at your job. That's probably something to do with it. But he's always been one to come out and say he understands the fans' frustrations, and it just seems to almost be that there's a bit of a tip of the iceberg
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
minute.
Yeah, I feel like, from my perspective, it kind of seems like a bit of an Eric Ten Hag situation. Like, obviously, with stuff that you were saying in the post match conferences about, trying to avoid the questions really and trying to like not really take responsibility. End of the day, we're all human. We all need to own up to our mistakes, whether or not if Gary O'Neill. He needs to kind of own up to okay, he's messed up. That's why obviously we're not going to be chanting, "You don't know what you're doing for nothing." That's if we see a problem, like we said numerous times, we can see where the problems are, and they're still not getting fixed, and we're still conceding from set pieces. So I think he just needs to take a bit of responsibility at the end of the day, and if he does, it might boost in our feelings a bit with him hiding and avoiding the question, really.
Yeah, well, we do like to have a good time on the Southbank podcast, so we are going to stop moaning now and talk about some standout performances from the weekend. Obviously, we've already spoke about Goncalo Guedes. I personally thought Santiago Bueno again had a really
Yeah.
good game. Thought João Gomez, as per, unbelievable.
Ball.
Cameron, anything else?
Yeah, I'll start off on João Gomez since that's where you left off. I think in recent weeks we have said his form dipped quite a bit. I think this week absolutely phenomenal. I think in previous weeks you'd argue if someone was going to come off for say your Tommy Doyle's or an extra winger in Carlos Forbes, you would previously have argued it should be João Gomez. But this week he was phenomenal, brilliant in his tackling, dynamic in the transition, and I thought he made all the right decisions, really. And not to mention, he scored a goal, his first at Molineux in the league, outside of a friendly against Stade Rennais, which was Lopetegui's last game. I think he was excellent, really, on the weekend. And my personal man of the match, I think Jose Sarr, except for the error, which tends to be something we say quite a bit recently, he was very good as well. I thought he kept out more than he let in. Obviously, that'd be a bit worrying if he let in more than he should be keeping out as a keeper, but he is a keeper. I think the biggest performance, though, definitely Santi Bueno. I thought he did very well against a physical Palace side. Mateta caused a lot of problems with his physicality. He is an absolute powerhouse, good on the ball, yet big and strong, and I think that's something quite hard to find in a forward. And I was expecting to hear the Palace fans chanting "Boom, boom, boom!" Mateta's in the room come the end of the game, because we almost did. We almost did concede. We'll come back to that later. Although I'm really impressed by Santi's performance. I think at times you see him running around roughing up Nketiah, who got subbed off quite early into the game, considering it was, I think, his first Palace start outside of cup matches. I thought Nketiah was not in the game at all. I think he was really roughed up by our centre halves, and they showed their experience to kind of deter him from having any contribution to the attack. I think what Santi does excellently is his tracking, his man marking. He does go man for man, and I think that is really where he's proving to excel in his defensive one-on-one situations. I think that's one of his strong points. And not to mention his brilliant pre-assist for Jurgen Strand Larsen's equaliser. What a ball to Cunha. That's like something we'd expect from Tommy Doyle, namely. And Cunha then sets him up to strike home. Great finish between the keeper's legs as well. I thought that was a brilliantly worked goal and a great moment. I think Cunha as well, usual standard. I wasn't sure whether to actually mention him as a standout player because I feel like that's the sort of level he plays at week in, week out. But I think he did have a significant impact on the game. There was quite a few crosses he put in, like reminiscent of his assist for Sarabi's goal against Tottenham, where he'd be cutting inside on the fullback and then putting an in-swinging cross. And I thought a lot of chances came about that way. Sometimes our players were unlucky not to be on the end of it, but I do think they were some brilliant individual performances. Jurgen Strand-Larsen, much improved in recent weeks. It seems he is turning into something of a talisman for our side, and he's really starting to find his feet in old goals. I think Guedes, when he came on, exceptional, definitely made a great impact on the game, stretching the defence, pulling fullbacks out of position, pulling centre halves out of position, really opening up the space for our attack to play the way they desire. But I was impressed by those individual performances, and I really hope that Gary O'Neill can make the right choices when it comes to team selection next week.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Mateus Cunha there, and if we were frustrated with Pablo Sarabia, imagine what Mateus Cunha was feeling, because, you know, not just one, but 2 assists robbed from him. The chip in the first half we spoke about, and the one that, to be fair, Henderson saves, but the fact it just struck him in the face, like, tells you all you need to know. You know, there's 2 corners in the goal, and he hit it directly in the goalkeeper's face. But Sammy, who stood out to you on Saturday night?
Yeah, like Cam said, and like you both said, João Gomez and Santi Bueno, you know, for me, they've got to be both of my players of the match. Like, you know, incredible performances. You know, it was a good signing that we had from Bruno, signing from Girona. Obviously, last season didn't really get as much game time and as much, you know, good performances that we've seen. But, you know, it's the same thing with most of these players when they signed in their first season. It was like Cunha, like when he first signed for us, he didn't have the best of the first season, but then look how it turns around. So I hope we can see that kind of side out of Santi Bueno again this season. Yeah, like you said, obviously, you know, incredible performance from Bueno. You know, obviously he was able to help fight the ball off Palace players as well, and obviously, like you said, with that pre-assist to Cunha as well. You know, he's a player that I should say should be starting more roughly, and someone else that kind of did stand out to me quite a bit. Obviously, with some saves blocked was Craig Dawson as well. Like when I think it was Chalobah, when he was trying to get it into the bottom left, or no, sorry, Mateta, when he was trying to get it into the bottom left, and just couple decent blocks from Craig Dawson. You know, that's the Ballon Dawson that we've all been missing. So yeah, and for João Gomez as well. You know, that's my pitbull. My pitbull right there. So, you know, he's quality player, absolutely amazing player. He's able to hold onto the ball as well. If, like Cam said, he's very dynamic. He could cut it through. So, you know, for me, he's my man of the match. And obviously, he got a brilliant goal as well. Nice little layoff from Goncalo Guedes. So, yeah, for me, those 2 are my player of the matches. And Craig Dawson's another standout for me as well, I reckon.
Yeah, just before we preview the Southampton game, I've got quite a serious question for you two. There's a missing persons case in Wolverhampton in a minute. I was just wondering if either of you have seen him. He had 100% pass completion against Newcastle. His name's Andre, who just seems to have vanished off the face of the earth at the moment. Sammy, have you seen him?
No, I will be honest. Obviously, seeing a couple of recent lineups and then not seeing Andre there and seeing him on the bench, I am kind of a bit disheartened in a way, because to sign a quality player like that from Fluminense, and we know how good he is on the ball, we know how good he is defensively as well, and how he's able to cut in and make them good passes and hold on to the ball. So for someone to not be starting of that quality player, it does worry us quite a bit. Obviously, I don't really know what's going through Gary O'Neill's mind sometimes with the certain starting lineups that he's kind of picking. But, you know, I hope we do see Andre more often. You know, it will be a shame for someone like him to have signed for Wolves, for him to be given a chance to actually prove what he's worth, to actually not be getting games. So I hope in recent fixtures to come, he is starting for us, because, you know, it will be a shame for a quality like that of a player to go amiss.
Yeah, Cam?
I do have to agree with Sami. I think he's been very underutilised. I think Gary O'Neill seemingly might not like him, in honesty. In a lot of his changes in previous matches, Andre looks like the one who gets carted off. He doesn't seem to be getting subbed on. And I'm not sure why that is. Like Sami said, a player of that quality doesn't go unnoticed. There were a lot of clubs after Andre before we were lucky enough to sign him, being Liverpool and Fulham. And Liverpool, he only rejected because he wanted to win the Copa Libertadores with his boyhood team. Although I'm really struggling to see why he doesn't get into this side more. I think defensively, he's very excellent. He supports the centre halves, really shuts down attacks. I think he's also excellent at stepping in and then intercepting the ball, and a brilliant passing range to boot. I really struggle to see why he doesn't get into this side. Part of me feels like he's maybe too similar a profile to what we have in one regard with João Gomez, as it's him and João Gomez both competing over the same starting spot for the Brazil national team. And maybe that's part of the reason. I'm not too sure, but I really think he is underutilized. I'm not sure what has gone on between him and Gary O'Neill, although I really hope it changes soon, because a player of that quality could easily be unhappy, have their head turned by a move in the position we're in, and then if he will go to another club and undoubtedly succeed, I think. So I really think players like that we need to utilise more, because a lot of these players, they don't look like they'll be here for long, I hate to say it, given our trajectory as a club. So I really hope we see more from him in the remainder of the season.
Yeah, I just thought, I do seem to remember when he first came to the club, there was a few reports that maybe this season he wouldn't play as much and it'd be like a filling in season, kind of like João Gomez at the start of his tenure at Wolves, but it doesn't really make sense or add up, because he did come straight into the team. And it's been ever since that, he was hooked off at half time against Man City for Tommy Doyle, which Gary O'Neill claims is tactical. But it was weird because I thought he had a really good first half in that Manchester City game, as per, because he's a quality footballer. And he's unlucky that he is in our midfield, which is, probably the one good thing about us at the minute. We've got a brilliant array of midfielders. But next match, Southampton at home. They don't get much bigger than this at this point. Playing, I know we're bottom of the league, but what many people consider the weakest team in the league, all due respect to Southampton, which at home any other team would be licking their lips, but because we're Wolverhampton wonders, we know what's coming, don't we, boys? Cam, seen this story too many times. What do you think?
It just feels like we repeat ourselves year after year. We always seem to struggle against the teams who are in and around us in the table or weaker than us. I'm not sure if it's complacency or if it's pure arrogance from us at this point, in honesty. I think against teams like Southampton, with all due respect, I have to agree, they are the weakest team in the league. I really rate a few of their players, but they have a very young, inexperienced squad when it comes to the Premier League. And I really think if anyone's going to stay in the position they're in, it will be Southampton. I don't see them staying up. And in one regard, if they get a result against us, be that draw or win, I think that could really do them favours. I hate to say it, Southampton have a win before we do. Now, I think that is quite embarrassing. And I really hope it doesn't cause a drop in our dressing room and a lift in theirs, so to speak. I don't want the boys to go in against Southampton thinking, okay, we're going to win this. They're a weak team, because they've got a win before you. They're going to think, oh, these boys haven't won all season. We won last game. It's our chance to build some form and get some momentum going, because we're going to stay up. That Southampton dressing room will be buoyant heading into the Wolves game, and they'll be bullish about their chances. Whereas we have the opposite problem. The pressure's piling up. The fans are starting to turn on the management, and the ownership, that's another situation. But I really think we have to win. There is no choice. If we don't win, we are in so much trouble. We will be very much adrift at the bottom, and that will create quite a gap between, let alone 17th and safety, but 18th, 19th place, where we would still sit bottom. I think you can't not win against this Southampton team at home in the Premier League. Otherwise, I hate to say it, we'd be deservedly going down.
Yeah, Sami, echo them thoughts?
Yeah, like Cam said, it's always the Wolves' way. It always is the Wolves' way. It's like last season when we play against big teams. It's either a good result, which we kind of see from obviously the Tottenham and Chelsea games last season. So, but then obviously when it comes to teams that are in the same kind of position as us, we always seem to bottle it. I personally think if we don't get a win against Southampton, then it clears an image into my head that Gary and Neil might have to get gone, because we can't, for us to be playing Southampton, who, like you guys have said, are kind of, in retrospective terms, the worst team in the league. It's appalling. It's astonishing. This isn't the Wolverhampton that we have. Like, to be losing against Southampton. Obviously, I can see us drawing and winning, but it's always the Wolves' way. We can't. We always predict the outcomes, and then it always goes the other way. So for me, we need a win. We do need a win. We need to get ourselves out of this relegation zone and try and get a win. And like Cam said, the fact that Southampton have won a game before us, it is embarrassing. This isn't Wolverhampton Wanderers. This is literally, no words could explain it. Because if we don't win, like I said, it puts a clear image into my mind that Gary Neal has to get gone.
Yeah, they'll be dead up for it Saturday. They will.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll be licking their lips, and for it to even get to a point where you've got the weakest team in the league coming to your home stadium and we're not confident speaks levels to how poor we have been in some of these games. I thought the draw to Palace was bad. I said on the podcast that we need 4 points out of Brighton and Palace for me to be satisfied, and we end up with 2. Granted, obviously we haven't lost either game, but you're not going to stay up on just draws at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get a score prediction off both of yous, but first, I don't know. We've got to win, and surely it's Matt. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 Wolves win. Sami?
I'm either going to say either 1-0 Wolves win or 1-1 draw. I can't see it going over them 3 goals.
I think by Cameron's reaction, he seems to agree with that. Do you, Cam?
Well, me and Sami, may I add, on last week's podcast, we both correctly predicted the score for last week with 2-2. I think going into the Southampton game, any less than a win is unacceptable, and I do have to agree Gary O'Neill should walk. And if he doesn't, I will also have questions. I think I'll be outside the mod and you have a sign saying, Fosun, what are you doing? But I will ultimately say I don't see it being more than a 3-goal match either. I think our attack has definitely been doing well in recent weeks, but we do seem to ship a lot of goals as well as we score them. So I could see it being a 2-1 Wolves win. That's what I'd hope. I could even see, weirdly enough, like a 3-1, but I do also think Southampton have a very good chance of leaving with a point. I don't see them winning. I really am being optimistic by saying that. And it's possible they do, given the fact they've already won a game before us. But I am going to remain optimistic. I'm going to say 3-1 Wolves. And I don't necessarily see that happening. I think it will be 1-1, or I'm going to be optimistic. Say 3-1. I'm really hoping the boys turn it around and we can put some form together.
Well, I hope me and you are the right ones this week. And
I hope I'm wrong.
Sami, I hope Sami is wrong this week.
I hope so. I hope, I want to be proven wrong, because if it proves me wrong, then it just shows that we're going into somewhere like in the right way.
Oh dear, it's not good, is it? But we'll wrap up the podcast there. I'd like to thank Cameron. I'd like to thank Sami for joining me. I'd like to thank all of you for watching. I've been your host, and this has been the Southbank Podcast.
On the Kick Radio app and online at kickradio.co.uk. This is Kick Radio.